cause I'm David, and I'm not alone. Back with the God who's on the throne, bring the heat back with a slingshot and these stones. I got no time for this nonsense, about to knock you unconscious. Already heard the prophecy, and one day I'll
Welcome back to Teaching Through the Bible. We'll talk about this rock in a minute. But we're going to start talking about 1 Samuel chapter 5, then chapter 6, chapter 7. So early on in the book of Samuel, we encounter the Philistines. Now these are people that, if you know from earlier in the Bible, they're already a problem for Israel. We've seen them at other times as well, back in Judges, the last book we just looked at, for example. But here in the book of Samuel, they have gone to battle with Israel and taken the Ark of the Covenant. Now, in this situation, this looks hopeless for Israel. Israel thinks of the Ark of the Covenant as like, that's where God is, right? So that's been taken away from them, and so they've lost the battle, and they've lost this object that represents for them God's presence. Like they've lost God. This is terrible for them in that, and anybody else in the ancient culture of the Middle East is going to have this kind of mentality of like, that is even more than represents, but kind of is to them God. And this is part of why God doesn't want them making images of him, because he doesn't want them thinking mistakenly this is somehow God, right? He is beyond that. He is not just some piece of metal, piece of wood, piece of rock, whatever it is. And so here, when they have lost the Ark of the Covenant, this is tragedy for them. The Philistines it's in celebration. They defeated the Israelites. They defeated the Israelite God, Yahweh. That's what the setting appears to the people involved. But we quickly see that is not accurate. We quickly see these people are wrong. The Philistines, they think they have defeated Yahweh because Yahweh is, in their minds, captured and put in custody of their own gods, put over by Dagon, their god, a grain god, and so they have them in the same space, and they worship Dagon, and they have now this Ark of the Covenant, and they think that their God is superior. Essentially, they won the battle because their God is superior. That's the mindset. That's how many ancient religions in the Middle East would have interpreted this. But we get to see something of the truth of who God is here, of who Yahweh is. He's not a God that needs people. He's a God that chooses to use people and wants us to be involved in what he wants done, and that's really awesome that he wants us to be involved. Like even with Adam and Eve in the garden, he wanted them to be involved. But he doesn't need us. He's never needed us, and we see this very clearly here. There's some parallels with Exodus, and even the Philistines later on mention, hey, let's not be like the Egyptians, because we know what happened to them. Well, what happens here? Here we have the Philistines. Let's get a little geographical context. We've got the Mediterranean Sea, and we've got Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, Dead Sea, and then down in the area where this area kind of between Dead Sea and Mediterranean, this is supposed to be Judah's land. But the Philistines, they're actually there, primarily 5 cities. Okay, we've got Ashdod, Ashkelon, and then on the bottom here, these two, we've got Gaza and Gath, and then up here we've got Ekron. This area is kind of Philistine territory. They have come from somewhere across the Mediterranean. They have built up cities here, invaded Judah's land, the land that was supposed to be Judah's. According to God, God said, go and wipe out the people there. They haven't done that. The Philistines are this thorn in their side for many years. But this is where the Philistines are. And so they've got the Ark of the Covenant. They think they've won. They put the Ark of the Covenant in there with their statue of their god Dagon. And they come back in the next day, and Dagon, he is just fallen over. And we see that they clearly have no idea how this has happened. And then, of course, they put, that's weird. How did he fall over? They put him back up. This is in chapter 5, verse 3, when the people of Ashdod, which is the city that it was in originally, when they brought it to the Philistines, rose early the next day. Behold, Dagon had fallen downward on the ground before the ark of Yahweh. So it's fallen face down before him, almost in a kind of worship, you could say. Obviously, not literally, it's just a statue, but you kind of have that picture of the false god face down before the true God. Put it back up. They come the next day. It's not just that. It's also now his head is gone. His hands are gone. He's just got his torso left, it says. When they arose early on the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen face downward on the ground before the ark of Yahweh, and the head of Dagon and both his hands were lying cut off on the threshold. Only the trunk of Dagon was left to him. So now we're seeing this full defeat. He's been beheaded. He has no hands. He is just the torso. And now, maybe they thought, hey, that's weird, it fell over, whatever. But now there's definitely been something going on that you can't explain by some natural phenomenon, right? And so their God that they worshiped, that they thought was so great, that they thought had defeated Yahweh, is now laying on the ground mutilated. And furthermore, now there's plagues. And that's where it starts sounding a lot like Egypt, right? And there's plagues of people getting tumors, people dying. We later on see that they bring up mice. They start talking about mice. So since this is a grain god, and they're having trouble with mice, and then there's also these tumors, that may all play in together. Perhaps there was a lot of mice that came and maybe even brought disease. Maybe that's unrelated to that. But mice that came and ate up their grain. So they had a plague of tumors and they had death. And then seems like probably the indication is that their grain, the grain that, they worship the grain god, and now their grain is gone. So their god has kind of in a pictured way been defeated, been mutilated, and then also has been shown to be defeated in that he's supposed to make sure they have grain, and they don't have grain. Yahweh has defeated him in a number of ways. And when this happens, though, they still think maybe it's a coincidence, right? They move to, they take the ark, and they move it to a different location. So it says the hand of Yahweh was heavy against the people of Ashdod, right? And they were terrified, they were afflicted, all this kind of stuff. And then they move it to Gath. It says in verse 8, so they brought the ark of the God of Israel there, to Gath. Right? So already had Ashdod here. They go all the way down to the other corner, to Gath. Same thing. Same thing happens. Tumors, death, plague, all that. So verse 10. So they sent the ark of God to Ekron. But as soon as the ark of God came to Ekron, the people of Ekron cried out, they have brought around to us the ark of the God of Israel to kill us and our people. They're like, this is sabotage. They're bringing it over there so that we'll all also get this. So people are starting to believe this is actually Yahweh doing this to them. And so in order to find out, is this Yahweh, or somehow this is just some crazy coincidence that all these terrible things are happening, they attach They put it on a cart, put 2 cows attached to it, and all right, are they going to go and bring it back to Israel, or are they going to go back to the baby cows that they've been pulled away from? And they go make a beeline straight for Israel and just leave their baby cows behind, which would have been totally unnatural thing to have happened. So now they know, the Philistines know, oh, that was Yahweh. And along with that, they not only sent the ark back, but they sent it back with gold. They made images of gold tumors, gold mice, and that's where we kind of see the mice playing into it. So it's not explicit that the mice were eating the grain, that they were part of the plague, but the fact that that's what the some of the golden images were kind of hints at that. But so now the ark is being brought back with all this gold, just like with Egypt, how God's people were finally freed, and they were actually they were told, ask your neighbors, your Egyptian neighbors, for like gold and silver and stuff, and they did, and they were given it, and they went out wealthy in a sense. Like they had more, they had been slaves, and then now they've got all this gold and silver and all these other things as they leave Egypt. And here, God, even without any of his people, gets that Ark of the Covenant back to Israel, plus more, plus all this gold. So he's quite turned the tables on them, and he has single-handedly, as it were, wiped out a large portion of their fighting force, because you have these 5 main cities, and 2 of them already, all the men there are either sick or tumorous or dead, and so that's a large portion of their fighting force. And in fact, we don't hear anything else about the Philistines bothering Israel for 20 years, because after this event, when the ark comes back over there, it says at the very beginning of chapter 7, verse 2, after the ark is back, it says, from the day that the ark was lodged at Kiriath Jearim, a long time passed, some 20 years. And it seems then after that is when the Philistines try to attack again. So 20 years later, they've maybe been able to rebuild their forces to some degree, either people recovering from illness, people growing older, ones who were kids before, now they're adults, so you've got more of a fighting force when they come to fight again. So God has crippled their army, and he did what the entire nation of Israel couldn't do, because Israel had fought these guys and lost the Ark of the Covenant, and God, he's got it covered. He can do it on his own. Again, he seems to really love for his people to be involved with his plans, but he can do it without them. And we see how powerful he is in this, and how much he doesn't actually need us, but just loves for us to be involved. So a really interesting point about kind of the character of who God is in this. And then we've seen him cripple their army once, and we're about to see this again, because what happens next? Philistines come to attack again. God then sends Samuel, and we get kind of a bit of this chapter has kind of a flavor of Judges that we've just gone over, the book of Judges, because it says Samuel is a judge, and he is the one that, he doesn't say that he necessarily personally fought, but that he is leading God's people and talking to God, praying to God, giving the sacrifice to lead the people to defeat the Philistines. And this time, they do actually succeed at Samuel's leadership. We see Samuel brings them all together, and it says actually in verse 10, as Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to attack Israel, but Yahweh thundered with a mighty sound that day against the Philistines and threw them into confusion, and they were defeated before Israel. And the men of Israel went out from Mitzpah and pursued the Philistines and struck them as far as below Beth Kor. So here they are involved in it. God's people do actually succeed in the battle, but it's still all because of Yahweh. They couldn't do it without Yahweh before. Yahweh could do it without them later, and then now they can do it, but only because of Yahweh. And so the Philistines are defeated again, and really because of Yahweh. It's really like we get kind of three different pictures of who's got the power here, and it's Yahweh. And so Samuel, in this very next verse, we see about the stone called Ebenezer. So he takes a stone, honestly probably much bigger than this one, but the biggest one I could get here, and it's a memorial stone that reminds them. He calls it Ebenezer, and that means the stone of help, which is why then we see he says, till now Yahweh has helped us. That's why it's called Ebenezer. Eben, stone, Ezer is help. So, stone of help. And so if you ever have sung the song Come Thou Fount, it has that, here I raise my Ebenezer, right? That is what that's talking about. It's referencing this verse, and it means the stone of help. So it's a reminder of how God is the one who helps them. That there's this recognition after we've seen this pattern of, all right, they can't do it without God. God can do it without them. They can do it only because of God. And now you have this reminder of that reality. And so that's what that's about. And whenever you sing that song, now you know where that's from. But this ends with Samuel kind of wrapping up his narrative to a degree, him being kind of, you could say, more the focal point before Saul enters, with Samuel being a judge of Israel. Seems like maybe kind of more of the judge like Deborah was, rather than the judge like most of the book of Judges was, where there are some times where he does lead, but a lot of times where he's doing actual, like, more, you could say, legal judging of some kind. Verse 15 of chapter 7, Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life, and he went on a circuit year by year to Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah, and he judged Israel in all these places. Then he would return to Ramah, for his home was there, and there also he judged Israel, and he built there an altar to Yahweh. And so that kind of sums up the bulk of Samuel's story, and he's still going to be there. He's still a central character as he transitions the people from his leadership to Saul's. But this has been kind of where he is the leader. And then next time, we're going to see when Israel demands for a king, when they get Saul, and they start moving towards the king role instead of the judge role as the one who's leading them. Thank you for watching that video. I hope that it helped you learn a little bit more about the Bible today. And if you'd like to continue to learn more about the Bible, then we have plenty of other videos on the channel. And if this has been helpful for you, then you can always let me know by subscribing to the channel. And hopefully I'll be able to continue to help you learn even more about God's Word. Thanks.